Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The nation is being consulted about how we want our newspapers to be regulated, what controls there should be to stop them abusing their power, or perhaps that should be if rather than how. And the organisation Hacked Off, which has been making the running for some years now on press regulation, is angry about it. Dr. Evan Harris is Executive Director of Hacked Off, and he's with me. Good morning.
Good morning.
Angry about what exactly?
Well, I think the public is angry that there's still no adequate remedy when the press are when people are abused by the press. So, for example, it's almost impossible for people who don't have the resources that the rich and powerful have to take a newspaper to court if you want to vindicate your rights in libel or in intrusion or harassment. It's very risky, scary, and the newspapers, and most newspapers are owned by multi-hundred-million-pound companies, can intimidate you into not being able to go to court. And Leveson said that must stop. There must be low-cost arbitration, which helps both sides. The lawyers lose out, obviously, but helps both sides. And if that isn't offered, if newspapers don't join a regulator that offers low-cost arbitration, then they're forcing people into court, and that people, with arguable cases at least, should not have to run the risk of paying costs. It's like going on a journey together. You want to take a bus, the other person wants to take a Rolls Royce. If they insist on the Rolls Royce, then they should pay. That's what the proposition was. Leveson recommended that. There was a cross-party agreement to deliver it. Parliament overwhelmingly voted for it. The public want it. But now, because Rebecca Brooks is back and the Murdochs are back in town and the government's been put upon by the press and they're weak and cowardly and craven, they're thinking of reneging. They're thinking of reneging on those promises, like they've done for cycles before of press scandal. They always give in to the press, and the victims through us are saying, no, this cannot happen. Just as with Hillsborough, we're not going to allow the press to get away with it.
Well, let's steady on. In Hillsborough, a lot of people died in Hillsborough, and that's slightly different, isn't it? But in this particular case, what you missed out of that was the fact that if I take a newspaper to court and I lose, in other words, the newspaper wins, the newspaper still has to pay my costs under this proposal, Section 40, and that surely is wrong.
Firstly, can I say the Hillsborough campaign are affiliated with us?
Well, indeed, they may very well be, but they want to draw comparisons between what happened at Hillsborough and what's happening here.
Making the Hillsborough were victims of press abuse. If you remember, Trevor Kavanagh and Kelvin Mackenzie came up with
a shocking case, and everybody accepts it was shocking.
Trevor
and the paper has paid a very big price for it.
He was part of that headline, he admitted, subsequent to most of the inquiries, and he's now on the board of the so-called independent regulator, which is why no one in Liverpool, for example, can have any faith in the system that the newspapers say is tough, just like the PCC. But coming to your point, if newspapers choose to force ordinary people to go to court, okay, not for vexatious claims or trivial claims. There's an exemption on those. Newspapers have nothing to fear from purely vexatious or trivial claims or abusive claims where claimants lie. But when you've got an arguable case that could go either way, if you are denied low-cost arbitration and you're forced into court by a newspaper that had the choice not to have that so, then the newspaper should pay for choosing to make you take those risks. That's what Leveson recommended, and that's what Parliament implemented. Now, you won't read...
But the fact is...
what I've just said, you will not read in the newspapers, and you'll often won't hear on broadcast.
Well, that's because it's not the whole picture,
because people only ever take their news from the newspapers, who are propaganda machines in this issue. They've always sought to protect themselves because they're a large corporate company with commercial interests.
Isn't there a sense, put aside that particular detail, and I accept it's an important one, but isn't there a sense in which you're painting the newspapers as the enemy of the people almost? Perhaps not the appropriate expression given that the headline in the Mail a few weeks ago about the judges, but nonetheless you're painting them as the enemy of the people. And people buy newspapers because they want other views. They want newspapers to hold authority to account. Occasionally newspapers will get it wrong, will get it very badly wrong, and they will be punished.
But they won't be punished at the moment. So people do. I buy newspapers. I don't buy newspapers to be lied to. I don't buy newspapers to find the weak picked on, harassed, intruded upon and libelled with no recourse.
Do you accept there's less of that happening now than there was?
No, I don't accept. There's not a shred of evidence for that. In fact, all the evidence suggests that that is not the case. There's supposed to be an inquiry, and this is what's also being consulted on, into police corruption with regard to the press and to the extent of corporate wrongdoing, particularly by people like James Murdoch, who are now bidding to hold a broadcaster's licence, which requires those licence holders to be fit and proper. It is astonishing, I would say outrageous, that the government is proposing to cancel that inquiry, phase 2 of the Leveson inquiry, to look at the stuff they couldn't ask about when the witnesses at phase 1 were facing criminal charges. So Rebecca Brooks and the others could not be asked about the email deletion policy that meant that millions of emails were deleted. And we have a government seeking to cancel that at a time when those people are seeking to pass a fit and proper test to hold a licence to take over Sky. And newspapers, for the first time in history, I've never known this before, are all clamouring for that inquiry into corporate corruption and police malpractice to be cancelled. They say, we want, on behalf of our readers, to have less information about the failings of the powerful. People can go to our website, Hacked Off, you'll find it on a Google,
all right,
and respond to that consultation and say, no, we want the truth.
Evan Harris, thank you very much. Thank you.